Hey friends, I started this video and I was just rambling about why I was not feeling too great and why I wasn't making a video. It just feels like every time I have this long history of all these videos and blog posts and all these things where I explain myself for why I haven't been around, and like I think past a certain point, even I don't really care. Like I mean, some people might be interested in it, but I think for the most part, maybe I'll type it in a comment if I care to do that, but I just want to get into the video. I did a tweet a couple of days ago that was referencing the situation that I'm in, but also, kind of a general thing that I care about, which is that people sometimes think that the bottleneck, meaning the constraint in their life, is time, that they don't have enough time. And that can sometimes be true. But in my experience, very often what happens is that the real constraint is not time in the abstract sense, but a supportive environment. And what I mean by that, for example, is have you ever had, this has happened to me multiple times, and I witnessed it happening to a friend and advisor that I really respect, which is, you think you want to write an essay about something, you feel that it's important, you want to devote a couple of hours to it, or maybe an evening to it, and you schedule, you block out your evening and say, okay, this evening I'm going to work on this essay that's really important, that I think is a good idea to work on. And the evening comes and goes and you didn't write the essay, and you might, so sometimes you just procrastinate, but sometimes it's like you're sitting in front of the document, you've typed in a few words and you look at it and you're like, I don't know what's happening. It's not coming out, right? And do you need more time? Maybe. But what I have found is that very often, if you then talk to a friend, and this has happened to me while working on my book as well, and I really want to learn this better and I want to talk about it and teach it. You talk to a friend and your friend asks you what you're working on, and you're like, oh, I'm working on this essay. And they're like, oh, cool, what's the essay about? And you're like, oh, the essay is about, smartphones, whatever it is that you want to talk about. And next thing you know, in that conversation, and you might even be texting them, right? And I think texting is ideal in some ways because you write out the essay in DMs to your friend. It's not the full essay, but like the core narrative structure that runs through the essay, why the essay should exist, the point of the essay, right? The reason reason I can't speak French. The reason for its existence, right, comes out because there's something about the context of talking with someone that challenges you to frame the idea that you have in a way that is accessible to the other person. And I found that the challenge of writing and facing a blank page is not just that the page is blank, and some people come up with very grandiose things like, oh, anything can happen on a page, you can start anywhere, you can make your ideas so big. And yeah, I've written 2 books, I felt that sense of how am I supposed to condense all of the history and all of the nuance into this white page that can be anything. And when you're talking to someone else, the cadence of the conversation, the context of the conversation, you're like, okay, where do I start with this? Do you know about this thing? Have you considered this? Have you ever wondered why when this happens, that happens? Have you ever run into someone who's dealing with this problem? And there's all of these things that come up in conversational cadence, right? Just in the natural ebb and flow back and forth of a conversation, you come up with a framing that makes sense because you want to make sense to your friend. You don't want to ramble on for an hour and they don't understand what you're talking about. So you're challenged to make sense in every utterance. And when I make these YouTube videos, I find that I'm also challenged to try and make sense in every utterance somewhat. And in some ways, making videos like this, once you get past the initial hurdle of why the fuck am I talking to a camera, right? It just can be a little bit weird. But once you remind yourself that, okay, I'm having a conversation with myself or with a proxy version of myself, or I'm imagining the audience that is listening. And then you have to make sure that every chunk of text coming out of your mouth, does anyone think like that? Every utterance that comes out of your mouth has to make sense, at least within itself in a self-contained way. And then you keep going, and then you have these chunks of text that make sense, right? Whereas when you're writing an essay or just working on a blank page, the thing that I've fallen into the trap of is you start outlining the history or you start explaining some detail, and then it just goes on and on and on, and you don't come back to the crux of what you're trying to convey. So conversations are great forcing functions for figuring out what you're trying to say and conveying it, right? To get the conveyance right. And yeah, even very smart people, I find, struggle with this because, again, it's almost like being smart can almost be a handicap here because you're thinking of all of the all of the idea space, right? All of the hypothetical places that the essay could go. And you really just want to flow interesting. That's a phrase I got from Paul Gilbert. Paul Gilbert's a guitarist, Paul Graham. You really want to flow interesting, and every step of the way you want to go to what the interestingness is. And if you get good at modeling the reader in an essay, then you can kind of do that, just as how I'm doing it in video where I'm modeling that I'm talking to somebody else. But it's easiest to do with someone else, even if you're a good subject matter expert. In fact, I said again, especially if you're a good subject matter expert, because without the constraint of someone listening to you and responding to you in real time, you can get carried away and talk about all the things you know, which is, a lot of stuff, which might not be relevant to the person who's listening, your target audience or whatever. So what I really wanted to say with all of that is that it's very powerful to have a supportive, encouraging context, which is a good listener, a good reader, a friend. And so my books, I would say Introspect is about being a supportive, encouraging environment to yourself, within yourself, such that you feel supported and nourished and challenged even to do your best work or to live your best life and to feel good and that kind of back and forth. Whereas some people have this really toxic, painful, vindictive, cruel back and forth with their heads. And so it's a miserable place to be inside their bodies. And you can see in their face, they're kind of tense and nervous. And you can see in my old video. Go and watch my videos from 2015, 2014. No, I have 2016. There's some old videos. You can see the tension in my face. I can't even I'm trying to act it out. I'm looking at my camera. I'm trying to. Can I do the flinch? I can't really. It's there's tension. There's tension here. I guess. Yeah. And it's frozen. And you just talk like that. You don't even. It's not even for effect. You just talk like this the whole time, and it's just. It's weird. I look at it and it's a strange thing to see, right? And so you want to massage your face, but it's not about the muscular tension. Even if you do get massages or whatever, if you don't address the root causes of the tension, then you're not gonna. The relaxation comes temporarily, but then the underlying structural stuff is what keeps you tense, right? And so yeah, it's worth getting massages and whatnot, but you have to get to the root cause of what's stressing you out, and it's in the heart of the labyrinth is. You go through the path of your most unpleasant experiences, and the core of it is, rejection, abandonment, guilt, shame, fear of death. Those are the things that scrunch up your face and make you seem unapproachable, tense, untrustworthy. Right. That's the cruelty of it all. But you can learn to relax. You can learn to create an environment for yourself where you feel safe and you feel okay taking risks, making mistakes. And that's what friends are for. If good friendship is shared understanding, and they want to help you understand yourself, they share their understanding with you, they make you feel less alone, less like you're in an adversarial context, less like the universe is an adversarial place. That's part of why you're flinch and you're tense. It's because the world feels like it's gonna fuck with you all the time. I didn't know I was going there, but that's where I went, right? So Introspect is about figuring out, creating again, the phrase safe space has come to mean things like coddling and kind of be, but by right, what it should be is, it's like a dojo. I mentioned this in the previous video, right? It's a dojo where you can train and you can make mistakes and you learn from it. And so that's what Introspect is about. And Friendly Ambitious Nerd, my other book, I would say it's about creating and sustaining a nourishing, supportive space between friends, right? So that collectively, as a group, as a squad, and as you grow bigger and bigger as a scene, the whole scene can be nourishing and supportive and challenging and facilitate each other's learning and growth, right? And that's part of why my part of Twitter is so fun and interesting, that people are making mistakes and learning all the time. They're having conversations with each other, and there's stuff in conversations between people that make for fantastic essays, because again, there's that organic quality between people, right? I think I'm just going to end this one here, and let me know about your thoughts and experiences about supportive contexts. When have you experienced a supportive context? When have you experienced one emerging, one diminishing? It's being able to know how to support yourself and support other people and how to ask for support. These are things that make people much more powerful to do whatever they want.